Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a review of House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. I have been so excited to do this review. I've been just, I can't wait to talk about it. This may possibly be my new favorite book. I don't want to speak too soon. It has been a little bit since I've read A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, which was previously my favorite series. I won't say that A Court of Thorns and Roses specifically was my favorite of those, but it might be being replaced by this book. I need to give it a reread though before I can say that 100% for sure. But okay, where to begin? So first of all, I just want to say as a disclaimer, if you're going to pick this book up and read it, please don't read the summary that's in the dust jacket. I didn't because I usually don't. I feel like a lot of times they give away plot points that are kind of a big deal in my opinion and like not something that I want to be spoiled with. And this for sure has a huge spoiler in the dust jacket. Having read it after I read the book, I don't know, it would have ruined things for me for sure. And I'm really glad that I didn't. And I highly suggest that you do the same if you haven't already. So to get into what the book's about, and I'm going to have to be very vague because there is a lot that I can't talk about without spoiling things. And I think for that reason, I will do kind of a rant spoiler section at the end, but I will give lots of warnings and a pause and all of that and let you know when that's coming so that you can switch off if you haven't read the book yet. So House of Earth and Blood follows Bryce Quinlan. She is half fae, half human, and she's a little bit of a wild child. She's described pretty often by Maas as being like a party girl, and she likes to go out with her friends, and she's very devil-may-care. She swears like a sailor, so if swearing is something that bothers you, there is a ton of that in this book. There were times that I kind of felt like in the very beginning of the book, like, is this really just another young adult book that Maas has called an adult fantasy by just adding in a bunch of swear words? Because it does kind of feel like that in the beginning, but it develops a lot more than that. So follows Bryce, and towards the very beginning of this book, there is a tragedy that happens to her. And that's when we get introduced to Hunt Athalar, who is our other main character of the book. Hunt is a fallen angel, and he's enslaved to the governor of the city because of a rebellion that happened years ago that he took part in. So he works for the governor of the city, and him and Bryce are kind of forced to team up, and they together have to solve kind of the crime surrounding this tragedy that happens to her and try and figure out all the pieces. And that's what the bulk of the plot of the book is about. Let's talk about the world a little bit. The world is really, really interesting to me because it's basically set in modern day. Like they have cell phones and all of that type of modern kind of technology, but then it's very, very magical. It's very fantasy. So it's neat to see the modern day stuff kind of combined with the fantasy because most of the time in my experience, authors more often tend to choose kind of more of a medieval level of technology to go with their fantasy worlds. So it was kind of refreshing to see it done in a modern world. The book itself is set in a place called Crescent City. And in Crescent City, there are 4 houses. Or maybe it's in the world completely. I wasn't really 100% sure on that, but there are 4 houses. There's the House of Earth and Blood, the House of Many Waters, the House of Sky and Breath, and the House of Flame and Shadow. So what kind of creature you are, what species you are, dictates what house you belong to. So there's the different houses, all the different types of creatures belong to each one. There are fae, mer people, shapeshifters of all kinds, angels, demons, sprites, witches, humans, vampires even, wraiths, reapers I think were even mentioned. I mean, there is everything you could think of. I'm assuming that there's nothing that she couldn't throw in there and say we're part of one of these houses. And there are characters, so many side characters that pretty much there's some representation of every house within the book, which is neat too. So the magic system. The magic system was pretty neat. It's not, I would say overall, like each different of the types, different species have their own kind of set of rules and their own magic and their own abilities. So there isn't one specific like hard magic system that dictates what their powers are, but there was one thing that I thought was so cool and so unique. And it's one of those things that, like, especially being a writer too, that like I read it and was like, oh, I wish I thought of that. That's so neat. And it's something that she calls the drop. And it's this process that all of the different types have of becoming immortal. And they're frozen at whatever point they choose to make this drop. So for a large portion of the book and in the beginning, Bryce has not made this drop yet. So she's not immortal, even though she's half fae. She can be killed and all of that. So Bryce herself, personality-wise, I already said she's described really often as like a party girl. She's super sassy, swears like a sailor. She's super confident. She kind of wears this confidence and arrogance like an armor around her, and she's described as being really, really beautiful and attractive. So it's almost like that whole concept of like being a dumb blonde or whatever. She's not blonde, but I'm just saying that concept of being a dumb blonde and then kind of using that, like her people's opinions that they have of her or their first impression of her being incorrect and her being maybe more clever or whatever else than they think she is. She lets them believe it anyway, and she almost kind of feeds into it on purpose to keep them from seeing the real her. So Hunt. Hunt is this very broody, also pretty sassy, dark and slightly, you know, depressed and broken character. And he's very interesting to me. He was pretty well done. I liked his character. I will say though, because I just have to, that oh my goodness, does Maas ever have a wing fetish? What is up with that? Rhysand and all of her boys in Court of Thorns and Roses series all have wings, okay? And then here we are again with another Maas book where her main character's love interest has wings. And granted, they're, you know, slightly different wings, like one's feathered and one's not, and they're both wings. We see you, Sarah J. Maas. We know what you're doing. Oh, romance-wise, oh my goodness. Talk about the slowest burn of all time. This is just like, you're gonna give us all a heart attack, and then we still don't even get anything in the end. Like, this is supposed to be this adult, and I mean, yeah, there's definitely more like sexual innuendo and stuff like that in this book, but man, she still leaves us hanging. This is the slowest burn romance of all time. It's very frustrating, but also so great, and so much tension and so much. She really did a really good job with that one. The side characters in this book are amazing, and they're so fully developed. Each single one of them has like such a complete backstory and such a complete personality. And I feel like it's so hard to put that much energy and to make them all so well-rounded like that and to show that within the book. I mean, granted, it is an 800-page book, but she just does it so well, and she inserts them all. And you know, you'd think it would be overwhelming how many she has, but she brings them up again and again enough to where I never felt like I couldn't keep up with it, and I never felt like it was too much. Does that make sense? Without giving anything away until I get to the spoiler section at the end, which we're not there yet, there were tons of plot twists in this book. I mean, left and right, everywhere you looked, something would be happening, and I would think I knew what was going on, and I would be determined, oh, okay, this is what this is. And then 2 seconds later, nope, wrong again. And I mean, they were everywhere, and I never saw them coming, and man, were they well done. Because I can almost always see it coming. I can almost always pick out the little hints and the little foreshadowing and put together the pieces of the puzzle that the author's trying to give us, and nothing ends up being super surprising to me. But there were several in this book that I was floored by, and in a good way, like in a nice, refreshing, surprising way, not like a it doesn't make any sense way. So that was really cool for me. I really enjoyed actually getting to feel surprised and shocked like I was supposed to for once. So I'm going to give my very brief list of cons for this book. First of all, I will say I'm still on the fence whether or not I feel like you could really call this adult fantasy and not YA. I mean, I get Maas is a YA author, okay? It's everything she's written so far. It's what she knows. It's what she's good at. And while I see where she was trying to go there. I feel like, at least in certain points, it just felt like, does it mean it's adult if she just adds in more cursing, more explicit sexual words? I mean, is that really the only defining borders? Yeah, it was longer too. There are some ways that I can see it, but I just will say that if you're going into this looking for an adult book and you're expecting her writing style to be different, you're expecting really even the themes to be any different, it isn't. It's definitely more towards YA themes, and her writing is not, the writing style is exactly the same, in my opinion. The other thing I will say is that at the very beginning, like maybe the first 100 pages or so, the complexity of the world feels a little bit overwhelming at first. There's a lot of hierarchy within the government. There's so many different races, all the different houses, the layout of the city, all those different side characters that end up being very manageable. All of that ends up being very manageable. She does a good job at bringing it all together in the end. But in the beginning, it does feel a little complicated. And if it's something you're not used to, if you're someone who usually reads YA, that usually is a little more condensed and a little briefer and not as expansive world building as this, I can see where it would feel overwhelming semi-easily. But I will say stick through it because it does get better. But that could be a con for me towards the beginning at least. So the end of this book, again, without giving any spoilers away, I'm just gonna say it was magic, pure magic, and absolutely breathtaking and masterful and just so well done. And it was one of those endings to a book that you just have to sit there and stare, and you feel like nothing is ever going to be that perfect again in that moment. You know what I mean? When you read the end of a book and you're just like, wow, that was so good. How is anything ever gonna top that? And it really did. This book really did put me in a reading slump for sure. Every book I picked up, I was like, what's the point? What's the point? It's not gonna be as good. It's not gonna be as good. And I don't know if I've ever felt like this, but I immediately wanted to reread it. Like, I just put down an 800-page book and I instantly wanted to read it again. That is how good this freaking book is. Read this book. Okay. Anyway, if you didn't guess by the rest of this review, I gave this book 5 well-earned stars from me. It was just wonderful. All right, I'm gonna breathe for a second and then I'm gonna come back and we're going to do the spoilery rant little end piece, because there's just some parts that I just need to talk about, but I don't want to spoil it for any of you who haven't gotten a chance to read it yet, because you need to read this book. So with that being said, if you're leaving at this point, thank you for joining me. Like, comment, and subscribe if you're new here. I will be back next week with some more fun videos coming your way, and we will move on to the spoiler section now. Bye guys. All right, the spoiler section of this video, aka the rant section, because I'm just gonna go off on this book. This was so freaking good. Okay, I just want to start off by saying I am so mad at what the jacket of this freaking book says. I mean, it literally says right here, until a demon murdered her closest friends. There is no way, if I had read that jacket, that I would not have immediately known who they were talking about the second Danica and the group were introduced. That is rude, okay? Because that moment when she's at the club and she realizes when she gets home, even in her like drunken, messed up state, what's happened, and you read those words and you realize that they are all dead, that is the most heart-wrenching, horrible, but wonderfully well-written, amazingly emotional part of this book. And for that to be ruined for you, and to know that was coming the whole time, oh, I would have been so mad. I would have been so mad. So please, people, don't read dust jackets. Why do they do this to us? It's rude. Okay, I'm gonna try and be done with that now. Get over that. So the plot twist in this book, man, I could not figure out who did what and what was going on. I don't know if I'm just did not see what was put in front of me or something. Usually I'm really good at figuring this stuff out, but man, I was every little thing from like the synth to like that moment when they thought that maybe Danica had been using synth and she was addict, and just all of these different things. Like, I mean, it just was mind-blowing to me. And the fact that she killed them all and then killed herself, I didn't see it coming. I didn't see one tiny little bit of that coming at all. And it was gut-wrenching. I mean, I was sobbing at that scene. I probably cried about 5 times during this book, and I am not one of those people who cries easily at a book. I sobbed at several different places in this book, and if you've read it, which hopefully you have it here in the spoiler section, hopefully you know what I mean. It was just so emotional. Then, oh my goodness, the ending. She's Starborn? I mean, I knew, okay, I will say one plot twist that I did see coming is I kind of felt like she had to have some kind of power, that she was hiding from the Autumn King and from all of them because she didn't want, I don't know, to be noticed by him or for him to try and control her or something like that. But I did not at all see it coming, that she was Starborn, that she was like even more powerful than Rune and all of that. Like I did not see that coming. But it's so cool. It's the whole like lighted up Danica thing that she had. Oh, it was such a perfect, beautiful tie together of all of that. And the cut scene going back and showing what happened that day with her and Danica, that was just, oh, it was so well done. So well done. But I never believed for a second that Danica was an addict. Never. She would not have done that. It's just, it doesn't fit. And I didn't like it. And I got mad too, which was completely the point. So she did good there too. It was just, this book is just, I can't. Okay. So I do want to talk about the whole like Hunt betrayal thing, because I've seen some people being like, oh, she shouldn't even be with Hunt after this because he betrayed her and blah, blah, blah. And am I the only one who felt like it was such a weak betrayal? I mean, it wasn't even that big of a deal to me. It was like, okay, so he was trying to get the synth for himself because he's a slave to this government and he doesn't want to be a slave anymore. And the uprising was a valid thing that probably should still happen. And of course he wants it if he thinks it's going to be more powerful, and he didn't know what it could do. Okay. And yeah, he omitted that for a little bit, but to me, it just didn't feel like such a huge deal that we had to be like, they should not ever be together now. Like that's just, he's lied to her. That's it. It just didn't feel like that big of a deal to me, but maybe that's just me. I don't know. Oh my God. And then there is the Micah scene where she fights Micah, and the part where she vacuums up his ashes, I was dead. That was so great and so Bryce and so just broadcasted on television. She's killed him, she's burned him, and she just vacuums them up like, oh, better clean up this mess. It's just the greatest thing ever. That was such a Bryce move. So well done. Great job, Maas, once again. The horn being in her tattoo, again, a shocker. I knew that tattoo had to have some kind of relevance, but what it was, I had no idea. And of course it's the freaking horn. Like, of course it is. It's just too great. It's too great. The scene with the drop at the end too, hello, that was the most, again, I have no words. Like, it was just so beautiful. The imagery of the drop, and then Danica coming in and being her anchor like they were supposed to. They made the drop together after all, even though she was dead. And then she gives the last seed of her soul away for her to help her make it back up again. And it just all came full circle. And she says, light it up to her. And I want to cry right now. I want to cry right now thinking about it. It was so good. It was so good. Okay. Anyway, I am gonna quit freaking out about this book now. And by now, I mean for right now, because I probably will not stop freaking out about this book for a really, really long time. But it was so good. And if you stuck around for all of this gibberish nonsense, I am so sorry. But this book has stolen a piece of my heart. And I don't think I even care. I don't think I want it back. Okay, I'm gonna go now. Go cry a little bit about how wonderful this book was.